Super fighting robot. Mega Man. Hi there, everyone. Gaijin Goombah here, ready to bring you your daily dose of cultural knowledge through video games. Now, before we get started, I need to make one thing very clear. I love Mega Man. It's one of the few franchises that I can call back to my childhood, and even though there's been an absence of the Blue Bomber in good games as of late, I don't care. I still loves me some Mega Man. I love the NES Classic games, I love the X series, I love the Legend series, I love the Archie comics, and I love the, Ruby Spear Saturday morning cartoon. So how can I show my utter love for this series? Well, by making a Game Exchange episode, of course. But as this is one of my favorite franchises ever, I think we need to do something a little special. Oh yeah. Much better. Now then, I honestly have enough information about this series to span multiple episodes, but really I think the most fascinating stuff comes from Mega Man 6. Oh, is that? You think Mega Man 6 is awful? You think 2 and 3 outshine this worn-out game? Well then, challenge accepted. Let me show you why not only does this game have some really neat cultural references, but why this might be the coolest Mega Man game of all time. Joining me today are the awesome tracks of Perez's Intercontinental Contenders album, and before anyone asks, yes, I did get his permission. So here we have 8 Robot Masters. Now the internet speculates that they are from 8 different parts of the world, but how well do they hold up in representing their homes in actuality? Well, let's have a look, beginning with probably one of the most obvious stereotypes, Tomahawk Man, and his connection with his home, and mine, the United States. Starting right off, the stage presents us with plateaus and other rocky formations in the background, as well as a shining sunset on a flat plain. If the Midwest and West are known for anything, it's for its flora-less flatlands and dry geographical formations respectively. So our location seems right. And there's also this guy, Colton. He's named after the Colt 6-shooter revolver that became very well known in the Wild West. So well known, in fact, that Colt still exists as a gun manufacturer today. As a little bit of interesting side knowledge, it takes exactly 6 buster shots to take him down, which is the same number of chambers that the old Colt pistols held. There's not much else here besides static enemies in this level, but I really do think this Robot Master does a good job of representing his home. Next, let's talk about Plant Man. Now, according to ScrewAttack.com, he is the worst Robot Master of all time. But let's hang back and see what exactly is going on here and see if the Flower Boy and his level accurately depicts his home of Brazil. I admit, this was a toughie. Where Tomahawk Man was obviously based off the US Wild West, Plant Man isn't so obvious. At first I thought his design was based off of the Rafflesia flower, which is what Vileplume is based after. The flower is not only the world's largest flower, but it's also a massive parasite. It grows on the rainforest floor, attaching itself to host vines, and this matches up with Plant Man's design very well. One problem: the Rafflesia flower grows in the rainforest of South Asia, not South America. But the flower doesn't have any leaves to speak of, and Plant Man does, so oh well. His stage is a far better representation anyway. That level is covered with canopies, dense forest, and even some water hazards, and I think that represents the Amazon pretty well. But how about the baddies? Well, there is the Batan, which reminds me of the Brazilian short-haired grasshopper. There's also Hellbert and Jetburden that sort of resemble the Brazilian harlequin beetle. There are also gorilla tanks, which mirror a few species of gorilla in the Amazon jungle. And finally, there's the Gabigos, which can obviously be referenced as the infamous Amazon piranha. So yeah, I think this guy checks out. Next, let's talk about Blizzard Man in his home of Canada. Okay, I think it's pretty obvious that they're going for a sort of Yukon look here in the level design. Everywhere you turn, it's ice, ice, ice. We do have a Nito submarine, but again, surrounded by ice. So I guess the stage checks out, so how about the enemies? Let's talk about this little puck of a guy called Curlinger. Wait. Okay, this is obviously a nod to the sport of curling. Now for those of you who have no idea what that is, 2 teams of 4 people slide what's called a stone across a sheet of ice and try to get the stone to stop as close to the target as possible. 2 members of the team are the sweepers, with brooms who try to speed up or slow down the stone by brushing the ice. Each team gets 8 stones, and the team with the most points wins. Makes sense. Lastly, there are these giant squid enemies called squidons. What might this have to do with Canada, you might say? Well, possibly not much during the time of the game's development, but in 2009, several giant squids were washed up on the shores of Vancouver, so obviously they existed around there. Probably not a direct reference, but I think it's a really interesting coincidence. I could talk about Blizzard Man's appearance with the skis and the hat, but I think it's pretty obvious to anyone what this means. In any case, I think Blizzard Man does do a good job representing his country. Next up is Nightman in his home of England. Both Nightman's personal and level design are very tricky in that I don't think there's anything that can pin Nightman down to England exclusively. To my knowledge, his armor seems pretty interchangeable in design from around Europe, and his weapon, the flail, actually has Germanic origin. I had a look at the enemies, and I think they're also a little too generic to link the level with the country. I thought maybe even the trees on the first screen could give some sort of hint, but they just look like normal evergreens. I suppose that the one thing that might link the design to the country would be how many utter death traps there are in this level. Spikes from the top, spikes from the bottom, bouncy traps, wheel traps. There's probably more traps in this level than any other, and I think that heavily reflects how traps fortified ye olde English castles. And from Bedfordshire to Worcestershire, there are a lot of castles, and in those castles are everything from moats to murder holes. So, in my final analysis, while I don't think Nightman really represents his country of England specifically, I think in terms of Europe in general, he does a pretty good job. Alright guys, I think I'm running out of time, but I haven't even begun to tell you the really cool references that Mega Man 6 has. If you thought these were interesting, just wait until part 2 when I roll out the big guns. But until that time, this is Gaijin Goombah signing out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to check out my YouTube channel for even more shows, commentaries, and opinion pieces. And if you're looking for some wacky fun, be sure to check out my budding Let's Play channel, Gaijin Gamers Play. But if you want more mind-blowing material, be sure to check out my pals MatPat and Ronnie on the Game Theorist channel.